Today's podcast is called 10 Ways to Sabotage Your Radiology Residency Interview. I think you're going to enjoy this. This will be a fun way to go through some of the faux pas of interviewing skills. So let's begin. As radiology attendings, we need to sit next to our residents for hours at a time. We get to know all the things about you, good and bad. It's kind of like a marriage. Interviews are time to let those idiosyncrasies shine through. We want to make sure during the interview process that you're a living, breathing person with a soul. Can you speak understandably? Are you able to hold a conversation? Are you funny or witty? What's your personal hygiene like? Believe it or not, that's a big one. Interviews also confirm the application that you have and is another measure of seeing if you're telling the truth. Unfortunately, even though all this emphasis is placed on the interview, we know and are aware that the interviews don't always weed out the bad from the good, but we use it as a preliminary measure along with all the other different application criteria in order to help us in the process. However, even though we know the interview process is imperfect, many prospective radiology residency candidates enter the interview system unprepared, and it almost seems like they have the perceived emotional IQ of a tomato. So my recommendation at the very beginning of the interview process is to practice and practice again. Make sure that you are ready for the process. In essence, you do have to become either an actor or an actress in a way so that you come off as a reasonable and knowledgeable person in the interview process. It's really important. Show us that you can handle the demands of a radiology residency. So since I've been doing so many interviews over the years, I thought I'd go through some of the characters or sorts of characters that we have met, as well as giving you examples of interview disasters that we have encountered over the years. We are going to go through 10 different characters, and we hope that none of these are going to be you. Please practice. So let's start with number 1, the liar. The third interview candidate of the day comes through, walks into the room and shakes my hand firmly, and we begin to talk. He seems very focused, and I enjoy talking with him. He starts talking about how he developed an organization that hires famous CEO guest speakers to come to his medical school and lecture on business and medicine topics. Sounds very interesting. I'm pretty impressed. The interview ran really smoothly, and I preliminarily give him high marks on our sheet. The interview comes to an end, and the selection committee subsequently meets. Each member of the selection committee goes through the application and also talks to one another, and every single story was different. In fact, the story was even different from the application. Bottom line, make sure to get your stories straight. Your oral presentation and written information should all reconcile and be aligned together. You need to tell the truth and stick with the same story. Second disastrous example, the smelly guy. Prior to the formal interview procedure, we have a social interaction period with the residents, and they get to know the individual applicants. This one time, after most of the residents left the room during the residency meet and greet session, I began to hear some grumbling from the residents. Suddenly, I walk into the room in order to give the talk to the new applicants, and I smell a stench. It becomes stronger and stronger as I walk toward this one applicant. The smell is pungent, and I can almost taste it in my mouth. My impulse is to run, but I have to be cordial due to the circumstances. I'm dreading the one-on-one interview process. Bottom line, make sure your hygiene is appropriate prior to starting your interviews. Appearance and smells are important. Example number 3, the sleepy man. Again, I'm giving my introductory lecture to our residency program for the applicants, and the lights begin to dim. I typically look at all the applicants in the room to keep the interest level high, but after 5 minutes of talking about our lecture, I hear a loud freight train type of noise emanating from the back row in the form of an applicant in a suit. My assumption is he's not interested in the residency program. He was a very good applicant, but his low interest level, based upon an impression of disinterest, caused him to be ranked toward the bottom of the list. Bottom line, it's really important to get a good sleep before the night of the interviews. Even if the applicant was only tired but really interested in our program, sleeping during the interview process shows lack of interest and respect. Number 4, Ms. Robot. There was one applicant who comes into the room for a formal interview. Entirely devoid of emotion and empathy, she responds in a robot-like tone, "Hi." We sit down, and applicant subsequently immediately launches into this speech about herself without any voice inflection or changes in tone or speed. I get the sense that she's done this 1,000 times before. There's no conversation-like tone at all, no interactive quality. Am I going to have to sit next to someone like this when I'm reading films? Really don't want that. Even though her application was excellent, the application committee decided to give her a do not rank assessment. Bottom line, practice interviewing with others. Pretend you're having a conversation because interacting with your interviewer is very important. Your perceived personality is at stake here. Next candidate, the shy guy. An applicant walks into my interview room and introduces himself. I can barely hear what he's saying. He stretches out to shake my hand. It feels cold, limp, clammy, and weak. The interview starts, and I try to get him to respond to my questions, but it's like pulling teeth. The answers last 10 seconds at the most. No conversation really was able to be had. I asked the residents who was sitting next to him in the conference room about this person, and no one could figure out this person's personality. Even though the application was okay, we felt that we didn't have enough information to put him on the rank list. Bottom line, you need to get over your fears and act and speak with confidence. It may involve practice, coaching, or psychological evaluation. If we can't figure out who you are during your interview, we're sure not going to offer you a position as well. Candidate number 6, Mrs. Bizarro. A woman across from me sits in the interview, and she looks pleasant and normal appearing, and suddenly everything changes. Our interview begins. Her eyes bulge out. She smiles and giggles inappropriately at the middle and end of sentences. Her answers seem most appropriately, but something's really off on this person. After the interview, we meet with the selection committee, and all the members are saying the same exact thing. What's going on with this person? We quickly take her off the rank list. Bottom line, you need to practice your interviewing skills in front of a mirror. Sometimes the quirks that you have in your personality can really be a topic of discussion for a selection committee. You don't want that to happen. This lady may have been an excellent radiologist, but we sure didn't feel comfortable having her in our program. Next, person number 7, Not Quite Right Joe. We begin talking to this person at the end of the interview about extracurricular activities and hobbies, and the applicant proceeds to talk about how he was into cow tipping as a college student, and how one college dean reprimanded him for the activity. And then I began to think to myself, why would someone ever want to mention that to us? We're not buddy-buddy with him, and why would someone want to do that to a cow? Off the rank list he goes. Bottom line, we're not your friends during the interview. Don't release any information that could make you appear strange or jeopardize your application. We certainly don't want to have any issues during our residency that can cause probation, suspension, or worse. Candidate 8, the guy all the residents hate. So I began to talk to this one candidate during the interview process, and he seems really interesting. Good hobbies, research projects, interesting. He seems to be a straight shooter, and he's pretty witty. We end the conversation on a high note with expectations that we're going to rank this person really highly. After the interview, we then meet with the admissions committee, which consists of many different people, and all the residents are there as well. And every single resident says this guy was obnoxious, chauvinistically, really sarcastic. Myself and the other program director we were both dumbfounded. The application was placed in the do not rank pile. Bottom line, you need to play nice with all the members of the staff, especially the residents. They have very important input into the residency application process and interviews. Number 9, the cell phone check. I start giving an introductory talk to the applicants about our program. I notice in the back every minute or two there's a woman looking down at her lap. Oh well, I continue on with my lecture. An hour later we meet for the interview, and again she seems to be a bit distracted. Her eyes continue to float down towards her phone every few minutes, and then I hear a ring. She picks up the phone and says to me, I need to get this. Obviously, she's not interested in our program. Bottom line, shut off your cell phone. It's real disrespect to use it during any time at the interview process. Number 10, the last one, Opaque Sam. We parse through an applicant's resume and ARIS transcript. In the package, it says this patient was arrested for DUI during college. So naturally, we need to talk about that during our interview because it signifies that the applicant has engaged in risky behaviors and has the potential to be an alcoholic. So we anxiously pop the question, what happened with your DUI arrest when you were in college? The applicant states, it happened, it's over, I don't want to talk about it. A moment of silence ensues. Flash forward to the selection committee meeting. All the interviews received the same response, no remorse, no explanation. We had no choice but to put the applicant in our do not rank pile. Bottom line, any negative events need to be addressed up front, or else an admissions committee may perceive the applicant as hiding something significant, whether true or not. Don't be opaque, Sam. Okay, so that was our 10 ways to sabotage your radiology residency interview with 10 different candidates, disastrous situations. So in summary, I would just like to say interviewing is often about what not to do as much as it is what you should say. Just make sure you're prepared for the interview day, and don't be like our 10 catastrophic characters.